I never thought my handicapped sister's wheelchair would be locked to our front porch by our power-hungry homeowner association president, until an undercover government agent revealed she had been watching our neighborhood for years. How far would you go when your family's freedom is literally taken away by the very people meant to protect your community? Comment below where you're watching from. The sound of metal scraping against concrete woke me up at dawn. I rushed to my front door, still in my pajamas, and could not believe my eyes. Two men in Willow Creek Estates Homeowner Association polos were actually wrapping a heavy chain around my sister Lisa's wheelchair and securing it to our porch railing with a massive lock. "Hey, what are you doing?" I shouted, running outside barefoot. "That's my sister's wheelchair." The taller man handed me a notice. "Mobility devices must be stored out of sight, per Homeowner Association Bylaw 23.4. This is your third warning." Third warning? We never got any warnings. I was completely shocked. Lisa had only moved in with me recently after the car accident that paralyzed her from the waist down. "Ma'am, please take it up with the board," the second man said, as they hurried to their vehicle and drove away. I tried to break the chain, but it was industrial grade. Lisa appeared in the doorway behind me, using her crutches. She hadn't touched in weeks. "What's happening, Sam?" Her voice was shaking. Lisa had worked so hard in physical therapy to gain strength with her wheelchair. "Some kind of mistake," I said, trying to stay calm for her sake. "I'll get this fixed right away." I called a locksmith who said he couldn't come until afternoon. Lisa was in distress. "I have my new job interview today. I can't miss it." I helped Lisa to my car and got her to the interview, but she was devastated about depending on me again. While she was gone, I read through all 94 pages of our homeowner association guidelines. There was indeed a rule about mobility equipment being stored inside or in designated areas, but the rule was clearly meant for things like bikes and scooters, not medical equipment. The locksmith finally arrived and cut the chain. It cost me $175 for the emergency service as he worked. My next-door neighbor, Diane Peterson, walked by with her 3 unauthorized garden gnomes that the homeowner association somehow never noticed. "Such a shame what Barbara's doing to you folks," Diane whispered. Barbara Thompson, the homeowner association president?" I asked. Diane nodded. "She does not like changes to the neighborhood aesthetic. The Millers had to move after their son got a service dog." That evening I emailed the homeowner association board explaining Lisa's disability and requesting an accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Within an hour I received a response. "Your request for exemption is denied. Additionally, the unauthorized wheelchair ramp at your front entrance must be removed within 48 hours. I was stunned. The ramp had been approved by the city, had permits. The next day, called the city planning office to confirm my permits were in order. They were, but when I returned home, there was a $500 fine taped to my door for unauthorized modifications. I spotted Barbara Thompson herself taking pictures of our house from the sidewalk. She was in her early 60s, perfectly styled blonde hair, wearing an expensive-looking tennis outfit, despite never using the community courts. "Barbara," I approached her calmly, "can we talk about this situation? My sister Lisa has a disability, and rules are rules." She cut me off. "Your sister's condition doesn't entitle you to decrease property values for everyone else. The wheelchair ramp is barely visible from the street," I explained, "and chaining down a wheelchair is not only cruel, but probably illegal." Barbara's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps Willow Creek isn't the right community for your family's needs." As she walked away, I noticed she completely ignored the Peterson's holiday inflatables still up from last Christmas, and Mr. Rivera's boat parked in his driveway against homeowner association rules. That night, I stayed up researching disability laws and discovered that what the homeowner association did clearly violated federal protections. I printed out the relevant laws to bring to the homeowner association meeting scheduled for the next evening. When I walked into the community center for the meeting, conversation suddenly stopped. 20 neighbors stared at me as I took a seat in the back row. Barbara was at the front table with 4 other board members. I raised my hand during the open comment section, but Barbara skipped over me repeatedly. Finally, I stood up. "I'd like to address the board." About disability accommodations and the illegal chaining of medical equipment, I said loudly. Barbara's face turned red. That's not on tonight's agenda. Sit down, or you'll be removed. My neighbor, Kevin Jackson, surprisingly stood up. I want to hear. What? Sam has to say my mother uses a wheelchair too. Barbara reluctantly allowed me 3 minutes. I explained Lisa's situation calmly and distributed copies of the ADA rules. Some neighbors nodded in agreement. Furthermore, included, I've documented selective application of homeowner association rules throughout our community with photographic evidence. I held up my folder of pictures showing numerous violations that went unpunished at certain homes. Barbara slammed her hammer. Meeting adjourned as people filed out. Kevin approached me. Be careful, he whispered. Barbara has friends on the city council, but you're not alone in this battle. I drove home feeling both worried and determined. When I pulled into my driveway, my heart stopped. Yellow eviction notices were plastered all over my front door. The eviction notices weren't even official. They were fake homeowner association documents made to look genuine. I tore them down before Lisa could see them and worry even more. The next morning I awoke up to the sound of drilling. I ran outside to find 2 men installing a security camera on the light post directly facing my house. What's going on? I demanded. Homeowner association security upgrades. The installer replied, without looking at me. All common areas are getting cameras. Except this camera wasn't pointing at any common area. It was aimed directly at my front door. I called my friend Mia, who was a real estate lawyer. They can't do this, she confirmed after hearing everything. Document everything. Get a camera of your own? I installed a doorbell camera that afternoon. Within an hour, Barbara Thompson herself marched up to my porch and slipped another notice into my mailbox. My camera caught her smirking at my door. The notice was, for another fine, $750 for making false accusations against the board. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Payment plans available if needed. We understand challenges can be financially difficult. That was the last straw. I created a private neighborhood Facebook group called Willow Creek Transparency and invited everyone except board members. By evening, 50 neighbors had joined. I shared my documentation of selective rule implementation with time-stamped photos. The comments poured in. They fined me $300 for my daughter's basketball hoop, but ignored the identical one at the treasurer's house. Barbara's son parks his business truck at her house every weekend against homeowner association rules. They denied my request for a solar panel but approved one for Barbara's friend. The next morning, someone slipped a large envelope under my door. Inside were financial documents showing that the homeowner association had paid $45,000 to a landscaping company owned by Barbara's brother for work that was never completed. The note read, I'm on the budget committee. There's more. Be careful who you believe. I made copies and locked the originals in my safe. When Lisa left for physical therapy, I drove to the county records office. The property maps showed that my wheelchair ramp was actually built entirely within my property line, not on common areas, as the homeowner association claimed. That afternoon, 3 board members, including Barbara, knocked on my door. We've come to offer a compromise, Barbara said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. We'll allow temporary use of the wheelchair, provided it's covered with an approved neutral-colored tarp. When outside, I remained calm. That's not a reasonable accommodation under federal law. Also, I'd like to discuss these financial records showing homeowner association funds paid to your brother's company. Barbara's face went pale. The other board members exchanged nervous glances. You're making a big mistake, Barbara hissed. I've been running this community for 15 years. People who challenge me don't last long here. After they left, I noticed a white van parked across the street. The same van was there the next day and the day after. Lisa was becoming anxious. Maybe we should just move. Sam, I don't want to cause trouble. This isn't about trouble, I told her. This is about standing up to injustice. We have every right to be here. I contacted the local news and showed them my evidence of bias and possible financial misconduct. They were interested but needed more sources. Through the Facebook group, I connected with the Millers, who had moved away after their son's service dog issue. They agreed to be interviewed. 3 other former residents came forward with similar cases. The reporter discovered that Barbara Thompson had been sued twice before for homeowner association discrimination in other communities. The cases had been settled quietly with non-disclosure agreements. I was preparing dinner when Kevin Jackson knocked on my back door. "Don't react to what I'm about to tell you," he said quietly. "I'm not just your neighbor. I'm with the FI's white-collar crime division. We've been investigating Barbara and this homeowner association for months." My mouth fell open. What? Financial fraud across multiple homeowner associations. But now, we're adding civil right violations. He handed me his card. "We need your help to build our case. Can we count on you?" Before I could answer, we heard glass breaking at the front of the house. We ran to find a brick had been thrown through Lisa's bedroom window. Attached was a note: "Leave, or worse." Kevin immediately called it in. "This changes things," he said grimly. "Now, we've got criminal threats." As police officers took statements and collected evidence, Barbara drove by slowly in her luxury vehicle, watching. Our eyes met, and she gave me a cold grin before driving away. I turned to Kevin. "What exactly do you need me to do?" Someone was knocking on my door at 9:30 p.m. I peeked through the blinds to see my neighbor, Kevin Jackson, standing on my porch, constantly looking over his shoulder. The moment I opened the door, he pushed past me without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk about Barbara and what she did to your sister's wheelchair," he whispered, his eyes wide with worry. "But not where anyone can see us talking." My stomach dropped. "Did you help her do that to Lisa's chair?" I asked, ready to throw him out. Kevin shook his head quickly. No, the opposite. I've been watching Barbara for months." He pulled out a wallet and flipped it open to reveal an FBI badge. "I'm not really a retired accountant. I'm an undercover officer." I nearly fell into my chair. "FBI for a homeowner association dispute. This goes way beyond wheelchair ramps and lawn decorations," Kevin said, lowering his voice even more. "Barbara Thompson has been running the scheme in 3 different neighborhoods over the past 5 years. Kevin explained that after receiving dozens of complaints about bias, the FBI started investigating Barbara 6 months ago. She would take over homeowner associations, change the rules, and then use her power to force out families she didn't want in the neighborhood. "Families like yours and your sister's," Kevin said grimly. "But she also skims money off the top. Those special assessments for the community pool repairs. Last year, half that money went straight into her personal account." I remembered writing that 800 check, barely able to afford it. "Are you serious? And nobody noticed?" "She replaces board members with her friends. Anyone who questions her gets targeted with violations until they move away." Kevin pulled out his phone and showed me photos of Barbara meeting with contractors behind the clubhouse. "She gets bribes from every vendor she forces the homeowner association to hire. So all those contractor vans at her house I started aren't just for her kitchen remodel," Kevin finished. "They're paying her to get exclusive homeowner association contracts." My mind raced through all the changes since Barbara became president 2 years ago. The landscaping company that doubled our fees. The new security system nobody wanted. The special assessment for roof repairs that somehow only happened on her street. "But why chain my sister's wheelchair?" I asked. "That seems personal." Kevin's expression darkened. "Barbara targets anyone she sees as lowering property values. She's been recorded using horrible language about people with disabilities. We have emails where she told the board, 'Your sister makes the neighborhood look like a hospital zone.'" My blood boiled. "That's disgusting. It's also illegal." Kevin said the wheelchair incident gives us solid evidence of ADA violations, but we need more to build a complete case about the financial crimes. He slid a small device across my table. "This is a special voice recorder. We need you to get her to admit to the wheelchair incident, and maybe talk about the homeowner association finances." I stared at the device. "You want me to spy on her? You'd be helping us build a case that could help dozens of families she's targeted," Kevin explained. "But I won't lie, it's not without risk. Barbara has friends in the local police department too." Just then, Headlights swept across my living room window. Kevin ducked down and peeked through the blinds. "That's her car," he whispered. "Third time today she's driven by your house." We watched in silence as Barbara's luxury vehicle crawled past, slowing dramatically in front of my home. Kevin waited until she turned the corner before standing up. "She's watching you," he warned. "Be careful what you say around anyone in the neighborhood. Some of them report back to her." As Kevin prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "Think about it. If you want to help, text the word pool to the number I put in your phone. If not, I understand." After he left, I sat in the dark living room for a long time. From down the hall, I hear Lisa struggling to get from her wheelchair to her bed without help, too proud to call out to me. The sound of her quiet frustration made my decision clear. I picked up my phone and typed pool. Within seconds, a response came back. "Meeting tomorrow, playground, 3 p.m. I went to check on Lisa, but as I approached her room, I noticed something outside her window. A small red light blinking in the bushes across the street. Someone was watching our house. I spotted Kevin sitting alone on a bench, from the filing cabinets and stuffing them into bags. They were destroying evidence. I snapped photos with my phone, then ducked down as they returned to the parking lot. Once they left, I drove home the long way to make sure I wasn't followed. When I finally got home, I found Lisa waiting up for me. "How did it go?" she asked anxiously. Before I could answer, we heard the sound of something hitting her garage door. I rushed to the window just in time to see Barbara's teenage son running away after spray painting. "Leave now." Across our garage. "It went exactly as planned," I said grimly, sending the photos and a message to Kevin. "They're nervous." Lisa wheeled over and squeezed my hand. "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," I said, "we spring the plan as we turned off the lights. I noticed a car slowly parking across the street, headlights off. Someone was watching our house. "Don't look," I whispered to Lisa, "but I think the FBI isn't the only one conducting monitoring tonight." Barbara's face turned white as a ghost when she saw Kevin holding up his FBI badge. I'll never forget the look in her eyes. Like a kid caught stealing cookies, but 1,000 times worse. "Barbara Thompson," Kevin announced loudly so everyone could hear. "The FBI has been watching you and your homeowner association board. For the past 8 months, people started coming out of their houses. The Jacksons across the street, the elderly Fosters from next door, even the Petersons stopped watering their illegal garden to stare." "This isn't what it looks like," Barbara stammered, dropping her documents. "I'm just enforcing the rules everyone agreed to." Kevin shook his head. "Rules you changed without proper votes. Rules you only applied to certain people. Rules that break federal disability policies." More FBI agents pulled up in unmarked vehicles. One handed me back the chain they'd found in Barbara's garage, the same one used on Lisa's wheelchair. They had fingerprint evidence linking it directly to Barbara and her favorite board member, Tom. "Will we have video evidence of you placing this chain?" The agent told Barbara. Her perfectly styled hair seemed to collapse as she realized she was truly caught. Lisa rolled onto the porch. "And I've never been prouder of my sister. I thought I was the one with mobility issues," she said to Barbara. "But you're the one who can't move forward with the changes." The news vent from Channel 7 pulled up. I'd called them the night before after Kevin gave me the approval. Their reporter, Sandra Lee, rushed over with her cameraman. "Is it true the Willow Creek Homeowner Association has been targeting disabled residents?" Sandra asked, microphone extended toward Barbara, who tried to cover her face. "No comment," Barbara shouted, attempting to push past the agents. Kevin stepped forward. "We have evidence that Mrs. Thompson and her board have embezzled over $350,000 from homeowner fees over the past 3 years." A collective gasp went through the growing crowd of residents. The Andersons, whose children's treehouse had been forced down last summer, were recording everything on their phones. "That money was supposed to fix the community pool," shouted Mr. Foster, who used a walker himself. "You said there wasn't enough in the funds." Barbara tried to reach her car, but another agent blocked her path. "We have a warrant to search your house and the homeowner association office," he said, holding up official papers. I noticed Tom Wilson and 2 other board members trying to sneak away through yards, Kevin. I pointed. The rest of her group is escaping. Agents quickly apprehended them, while others began searching Barbara's property. Within minutes, they carried out boxes of records, hard drives, and most shocking of all, a safe containing cash and valuables that Barbara had bought with our money. We found falsified ballots from the last 3 homeowner association elections, announced a female agent. Barbara has been rigging votes to keep herself in power. The Petersons, who had always supported Barbara, looked stunned. She told us our Christmas decorations were approved because they added style to the community, Mrs. Peterson admitted, but she fined the Martinez family for their holiday lights. Kevin addressed the growing crowd. We believe Mrs. Thompson has been targeting homeowners who challenged her authority or who she personally disliked. She's been using selective rules as a weapon. My phone buzzed with text messages from residents I barely knew, all expressing shock and support. The community I thought had turned against Lisa and me was actually filled with people who'd been bullied into silence. An emergency neighborhood meeting was called that very evening at the clubhouse. Almost everyone from Willow Creek's residences attended. The largest turnout in community history. People shared story after story of Barbara's control. She fined me for my daughter's basketball hoop, but ignored the Wilsons' identical one, said Mrs. Garcia. She denied my request for a security light after my break-in but approved her friend's backyard lamp that shines right into my bedroom, added Mr. Patel. The FBI presented evidence that Barbara had created a fake maintenance company that charged the homeowner association double the normal rates, with half the money going straight to her personal account. They showed bank statements of her vacation home in Florida and her luxury car, all paid for with our hard-earned money. How did you catch her? Someone asked me. It started with a wheelchair chain, I explained, holding up the heavy metal links. She went too far when she targeted someone who couldn't defend themselves. But Lisa and I decided to fight back with proof, not rage. The crowd applauded. I wasn't used to being the center of attention, but it felt good to stand up, not just for Lisa, but for everyone. By majority vote, a temporary board was formed that night. To my surprise, they asked me to join. We need someone who stands up for what's fair, said Mrs. Foster. 1 week later, Barbara, Tom and 2 other board members were formally charged with multiple national crimes: deception, embezzlement, civil rights violations, and conspiracy. They faced years in prison and heavy penalties. The homeowner association bank accounts were frozen while forensic auditors traced every missing dollar. The new board discovered Barbara had been skimming funds for nearly 5 years, almost from the day she became leader. Our first official act as the new board was to pass a comprehensive accessibility rule. With Lisa as the advisor, all notices were suspended while we rewrote the guidelines. To be just and clear, this isn't about getting revenge, I told the news reporter who covered our story. It's about making sure everybody feels included in their own community. 2 months later, the residents gathered for a celebration. The first in Willow Creek's history. People who had lived next door to each other for years were finally becoming companions. Children played on lawns without fear of warnings. The Martinez family's son, who used a walker like Lisa, demonstrated the new inclusive playground facilities we'd installed with recovered resources. As Lisa and I watched our neighbors laughing and sharing meals, she squeezed my hand. "Thank you for not giving up," she said. "Some chains you can see and some you can't. We broke both kinds." The infamous wheelchair lock now hangs in our community center with a small plaque that reads, "Freedom sometimes requires bravery, unity, and occasionally the FBI." Barbara's home stands empty, waiting for sale. Sometimes I catch residents looking at it as they walk by, still processing how one person gains so much authority over our lives. But mostly, people are looking forward, not backward. Yesterday, Lisa rolled easily up the gentle slope of our new neighborhood-wide pathways, racing the local kids on their bicycles. No chains, no barriers, no fear. She smiled at me and said something I'll never forget. "The best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting stronger."